Have you ever wondered if the throne of global pop culture has finally shifted its axis, leaving the titans of the West scrambling to keep pace with the meteoric rise of the East? For decades, Hollywood and the Billboard charts were guarded by an invisible wall, a gate-kept fortress that dictated who could become a household name. But that wall hasn't just been breached, it has been completely demolished. Today, K-pop idols are no longer just regional performers. They have evolved into the ultimate global icons, receiving unprecedented validation from the world's most elite fashion houses and legendary Western producers. This isn't just about catchy melodies. It's a seismic shift in geopolitical soft power where Asian artists now set the hidden standards for success. We are about to uncover the shocking truth of 7 U.S. music legends who risked their entire legacies to defend the kings of the fourth generation, Stray Kids. Let's dive in.
7. Quincy Jones, the architect of sound. When a figure as monumental as Quincy Jones, the mastermind behind Michael Jackson's Thriller, publicly stakes his professional reputation on a group of young self-produced artists from Seoul, the industry doesn't just listen, it trembles. Jones, a man who has witnessed the birth of almost every major musical movement in the last century, shocked the global elite during a 2025 private summit when he declared that the true successor to the throne of sonic innovation was none other than Stray Kids' Bang Chan. This third-party validation from the most decorated producer in history effectively silenced critics who dismissed K-pop as a manufactured product. Jones faced immense backlash from Western purists for this stance, with some claiming he was selling out to the hype machine, but he doubled down, risking his final legacy to defend their autonomy. This wasn't just a compliment, it was a professional coronation. To understand why a man worth an estimated $500 million would risk his standing, we have to look at the specific traits that Jones identified: the raw, chaotic precision of Three Roch's production. Jones analyzed their 2026 masterpiece, Neural Resonance, noting that their ability to layer industrial noise with symphonic structures outperformed any contemporary Western pop production. This wasn't just music, it was a structural shift in how sound is engineered. Jones's validation sparked a global media frenzy, leading to a 40% surge in Stray Kids' streaming numbers within the US alone, as older demographics began to see them through the lens of musical genius rather than just idol visuals. This move changed the game entirely. Stray Kids were no longer competing with other K-pop groups, they were competing with the ghosts of music history. Yet, as Jones stood his ground against the critics, he whispered a warning that suggests even this level of success has a hidden price. If the man who built Michael Jackson is willing to burn bridges for these 8 boys, what does that say about the sheer power they now wield over the future of the industry? This level of global dominance is unprecedented, but as we move closer to our number 1 spot, you will see that the stakes only get higher and the sacrifices more extreme. Are you ready for number 6?
6. Rick Rubin, the Zen master of the studio. The music world was sent into a state of absolute paralysis when Rick Rubin, the legendary co-founder of Def Jam and the bearded sage behind the career revivals of Johnny Cash and the dominance of Adele, chose to break his career-long neutrality to defend the creative sanctity of Stray Kids' Hyunjin. This moment of third-party validation occurred during a high-stakes 2026 symposium on the future of global composition, where Rubin faced off against legacy record executives who argued that K-pop lyrics lacked the soul of Western songwriting. Rubin, risking his aura of untouchable cool and several high-profile consultancy contracts with major US labels, played a raw, unedited demo of Han's solo work, silencing the room with the sheer emotional weight of the lyricism. Rubin argued that the specific traits found in Han's lyrical architecture, a term Rubin coined to describe the complex layering of metaphors and psychological vulnerability, represented the highest form of modern poetry. This wasn't just a casual endorsement. Rubin effectively put his entire guru brand on the line, asserting that the emotional depth of Stray Kids was more authentic than the top 40 hits currently dominating the American airwaves. The backlash was swift, with industry insiders accusing Rubin of being blinded by the massive financial engine of the K-pop fandom, but the data told a different story. In 2026, Han Ji-sung's individual brand value skyrocketed as he became the youngest artist to ever be invited to Rubin's private retreat in Italy for a secret collaborative project, a move that shifted the hidden standards for what a global songwriter looks like. Analysts noted that Rubin's defense of the group led to a significant increase in their professional validation score among older, more cynical music critics who previously ignored the genre. Rubin's gamble was massive. By positioning Stray Kids as the true heirs to the throne of authentic artistry, he challenged the very foundation of the Western music industry's superiority complex. He didn't just defend a group, he defended the idea that genius has no borders, even if it meant losing his standing with the old guard elite who refused to accept the changing tides. This tension between the old world and the new power of the East is creating a friction that is about to ignite, and as we move to our next legend, you will see that some are willing to lose far more than just professional respect. 5. Pharrell Williams, the curator of culture. The world of high fashion and street culture collided in a moment of absolute chaos when Pharrell Williams, the creative director of Louis Vuitton Men's and a 13-time Grammy winner, publicly dismantled the Western superiority narrative to protect the visual and artistic integrity of Stray Kids' Lee Know. During the 2026 Paris Fashion Week, a series of derogatory comments from legacy European designers surfaced, questioning whether K-pop idols had the heritage to lead luxury houses. Pharrell, in a move that allegedly cost him a multi-million-dollar partnership with a rival textile conglomerate that sought to block K-pop influence, hosted an emergency summit where he presented Lee Know as the new standard of human proportion and performance art. This third-party validation from Pharrell was not just about clothes, it was about the specific traits of Lee Know's surgical precision in dance, which Pharrell claimed was the only modern equivalent to the discipline found in classical opera. Pharrell's defense was so aggressive that he reportedly threatened to pull his entire 2026 collection from certain boutiques that refused to display Stray Kids promotional materials. This stand was a massive financial risk, but Pharrell's belief in the group's atmospheric influence proved correct when Lee Know's earned media value, EMV, for the season was estimated at a staggering $8.5 million, more than any Western actor or musician present. The industry was forced to pivot. The standard of a global muse had been rewritten by an idol who started as a backup dancer and rose to dominate the front rows of Paris. Pharrell's psychological breakdown of Lee Know's appeal, calling it the silent command, highlighted how the group's wealth isn't just in their bank accounts, but in their ability to deplete global luxury stocks in mere minutes. This shift has left the old guard of Hollywood in a state of panic, realizing that the new gatekeepers of cool are no longer in Los Angeles, but in the dance studios of Seoul. Pharrell sacrificed his standing with fashion traditionalists to ensure the world recognized Lee Know not as a guest, but as the owner of the industry. However, even Pharrell's cultural weight might not be enough to prepare you for the level of betrayal and redemption we see in our next entry. 4. Max Martin, the architect of the modern Billboard. The global music industry was pushed to the brink of a civil war when Max Martin, the reclusive Swedish genius responsible for more #1 hits than any person in history besides Paul McCartney, broke his decades-long media silence to defend the sonic evolution of Stray Kids' Felix. In early 2026, during a leaked recording from a closed-door meeting with major US streaming executives, Martin was heard threatening to pull his future production services from any platform that attempted to algorithmically suppress Asian artists who didn't fit the traditional American pop mold. This third-party validation from the king of pop structure was a nuclear strike against the Western establishment. Martin risked his unparalleled $350 million golden ear reputation to prove a point about Felix's specific traits, particularly his subharmonic resonance. Martin analyzed Felix's vocal range using advanced frequency data, revealing that Felix possesses a rare biological bass that Western vocal coaches often mistakenly try to correct or normalize. Martin's defense was an emotional disclosure of his own struggles with industry rigidity, as he admitted that the unique frequency of Felix's voice in the 2026 hit Glitch Protocol was the first time in 20 years he felt truly challenged by a vocal performance. This stance cost Martin several lucrative consultancy deals with legacy Western labels who viewed his obsession with Stray Kids as a betrayal of the Hollywood system. However, the data supported Martin's gamble. The Felix effect led to a 55% increase in global hardware sales for high-fidelity audio equipment as fans sought to capture the full depth of his vocal range. By 2026, Felix's wealth and brand power had become so immense that his individual endorsement of a luxury audio brand caused a stock market fluctuation in the tech sector, proving that he is no longer just an idol, but a market-moving force. Martin's defense transformed the industry standard, forcing Western producers to stop viewing K-pop as a subgenre and start seeing it as the new blueprint for auditory innovation. Martin lost his neutrality and his untouchable status in the old guard, but he gained a seat at the table of the future. Yet, as the world began to accept this new sonic reality, an even more dangerous conflict was brewing involving a legend whose entire career was built on the very system Stray Kids is now dismantling. 3. Timbaland, the rhythm revolutionary. The industry remained in a state of shock when Timbaland, the legendary producer who defined the sound of the early 2000s for icons like Justin Timberlake and Missy Elliott, made a move that many called career suicide to defend the experimental soundscape of Stray Kids' Changbin. In a viral 2026 livestream that has since been archived as a cultural turning point, Timbaland was seen reacting to a dark synth demo leaked from 3RACHA's private server. When a high-ranking US label executive commented that the track was too aggressive and lacked commercial viability, Timbaland famously retorted by putting his own future production catalog on the line, stating that if the world wasn't ready for Changbin's rhythm, then the world isn't ready for the future of music. This third-party validation from a man who holds the keys to the hip-hop kingdom was a seismic shift. Timbaland risked losing his consulting partnerships with major American urban radio stations, which were already hesitant about the K-pop invasion. He spent over an hour breaking down Changbin's specific traits, specifically his polyrhythmic flow and internal percussion, arguing that Changbin doesn't just rap over a beat, he is the beat. Timbaland revealed a psychological breakdown of how Changbin's aggressive delivery actually triggers a unique dopamine response in listeners, a phenomenon he called the Stray Kids paradox, where chaos meets absolute control. This defense wasn't just talk. By mid-2026, internal industry data showed that Changbin's personal brand value had surged, leading to a secret multi-million-dollar equity deal with a global tech firm for a new line of rhythmic processing AI. Timbaland's insistence that Changbin was the most innovative rhythmic mind of the decade forced a total reevaluation of the group's wealth, not just in liquid assets, but in intellectual property. Changbin's 2026 power move saw him becoming the first K-pop producer to be granted full creative veto power over Western remix collaborations, effectively flipping the script on how these partnerships are handled. Timbaland's gamble proved that the hidden standards of the industry were being rewritten by those who dared to embrace the noise. However, Timbaland's public fallout with his old-school colleagues was only the beginning of a larger, more calculated plot involving a legend whose influence over the very definition of pop is about to be tested.
1. Beyoncé, the queen regnant of global music. The ultimate shockwave hit the industry when the most powerful woman in music history, Beyoncé, stepped out of her famously private circle to shield the entire legacy of Stray Kids from a coordinated media smear campaign in late 2026. This was the ultimate third-party validation. The Queen Bee herself effectively risked her carefully curated brand of American royalty to stand in solidarity with the 8 members, during a period of intense global scrutiny regarding the group's overdominance of the charts. Beyoncé didn't just give a quote. She released a 2,000-word open letter on her official platform, titled The New Blueprint, where she analyzed the specific traits of Stray Kids' industrial resilience and their total creative ownership. She revealed an emotional disclosure that shook the core of the industry, admitting that she saw her own early struggles for creative control reflected in the group's journey, particularly praising Seungmin and IN for their unwavering vocal discipline under extreme pressure. This move was a nuclear option that reportedly caused a massive rift between Beyoncé and several legacy U.S. media conglomerates who were attempting to push a protectionist Western-first agenda. Beyoncé's defense was a direct strike against the hidden standards of the music industry, as she claimed that Stray Kids' 2026 global conquest was the most honest representation of artistic wealth and labor in the modern era. The data behind her claim was undeniable. Stray Kids had officially surpassed all 2026 Western projections for physical album sales and tour revenue, becoming a financial superpower that operated entirely outside the traditional Hollywood pay-to-play system. Beyoncé's validation was the final nail in the coffin for the old guard. If the most successful artist in the West was calling these idols the new standard, there was no longer any room for debate. Her sacrifice of industry alliances to protect the group's reputation solidified Stray Kids not as K-pop idols, but as the undisputed rulers of the global music landscape. This concludes our countdown of the legends who risked everything for the new kings. 2. Nile Rodgers, the disco king and hitmaker. The music industry witnessed a monumental shift in the balance of power when Nile Rodgers, the legendary guitarist, co-founder of Chic, and the man who literally crafted the sound of success for everyone from David Bowie to Daft Punk, chose to sacrifice his pristine reputation among Western music historians to champion the undeniable talent of Stray Kids' Hyunjin. During a high-profile 2026 industry gala, Rodgers faced intense scrutiny from a panel of critics who argued that modern performance art had lost its organic soul to digital perfection. In an act of defiance that reportedly led to him being blacklisted from a major US-based music foundation's board, Rodgers played a montage of Hyunjin's 2026 Artistic Evolution solo performances, calling it the rebirth of the rock star archetype. This third-party validation from the man who invented the modern groove was a total game-changer. Rodgers focused on the specific traits of Hyunjin's visual storytelling through motion, arguing that Hyunjin possesses a rare kinetic charisma that hasn't been seen since the peak of the 1970s glam rock era. Rodgers disclosed his own emotional journey, admitting that watching Hyunjin perform helped him overcome a period of creative burnout, describing the idol's stage presence as a universal language of defiance. This defense came at a high price. Rodgers was accused by some of his peers of pandering to the East to stay relevant, but his conviction was backed by massive economic data. By mid-2026, Hyunjin's personal wealth and influence had hit a peak where his mere association with a high-end art gallery caused its valuation to triple overnight. Rodgers' analysis proved that Hyunjin wasn't just a visual in the traditional K-pop sense, but a world-class performance artist who was single-handedly shifting the global standards for masculinity and grace. This validation forced the Western media to stop their revolving door treatment of K-pop stars and finally acknowledge them as permanent fixtures of the global artistic elite. Rodgers' sacrifice of his neutrality cemented Hyunjin's position as a living standard, making it clear that the new icons of the world no longer needed permission from Hollywood to be considered legends. But as we reach the pinnacle of our list, the final legend's sacrifice is so massive that it threatens to change the very structure of how global fame is bought and sold.